We are back now on the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast to go over this last segment here that we have in store. Just briefly going over the developments of the situation between Randy Gregory and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, because it's been an odd one because the Bucs and Randy Gregory initially, agreed to a one-year deal overall, but finally reached an agreement to release the edge rusher this week, and the Bucs will get back the signing bonus that they set out for Randy Gregory. So it turned out as bad as it could have for a free agent signing. And Genwil Bolandres, you ain't anything special, Tua. He's an NFL fantasy dream for points, but a bum. It is what it is, I think, with Tua. I think it's very polarizing with Tua. You could look at it as a guy that gets hurt a lot, doesn't have a great arm. That's everything that's been said about Tua. But in another breath, he puts up great performances. One of the best quarterbacks in the NFL last year. So, very polarizing guy. And I think a thing that I didn't mention before in that segment was that while Brian Flores might be getting a bunch of the heat for how that situation broke down, there does come a point where Tua has to prove him wrong in a sense now that he has the head coach that he loves. He produced a great year. It comes to a point now where you have to just go out there and be successful, because if you're not, going back to that situation with Brian Flores, it could look now like a situation where Brian maybe was right about doubting Tua to an extent years after still Tua has not been successful. So I can see both sides of it, but going back to this situation now with Randy Gregory here, like I mentioned before, the Bucs signed Randy Gregory to a one-year deal this offseason to add what I thought was good depth at that spot, especially with guys like Yaya Diaby and just other guys on that roster that really haven't stepped up too much from an edge rusher perspective. But, with the situation, Randy Gregory just never showed up for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at any point this offseason in minicamp, OTAs, training camp, obviously. He was not present at all whatsoever for the Buccaneers, and he exceeded $1 million in fines on Saturday, when it was the last time that those fines started coming in for Randy Gregory. So, exceeding that much in fines is, crazy, ridiculous. And really one of the biggest things about this situation and how odd it was that a big thing that the Bucs mentioned was that they never really knew why Randy Gregory failed to show up, because it wasn't a case of getting a contract or getting an extension or anything like that, similar to Hassan Reddick. I couldn't tell you a reason why Randy Gregory failed to show up, and it came to a point where there was a lot of back and forths. Todd Bowles had some comments to make about it earlier on in the offseason, but ultimately it ended up, again, with them agreeing to a release of Randy Gregory, and also the Bucs placing Randy Gregory on the reserve did not report list on July 23rd. So that pretty much began the process, and now they've culminated that with the release of Randy Gregory already. And some of the reasons, why I kind of pieced together why he wasn't there could be because at one point this offseason, Randy Gregory filed a lawsuit against the NFL and the Denver Broncos over an alleged discrimination issue back in June. Randy Gregory claimed that the Denver Broncos and the NFL denied him the use of a drug. I'm not going to try and pronounce it. You guys can look it up, but I'm going to butcher it. Pretty much a drug prescribed to him by a doctor to treat social anxiety disorder and PTS. And potentially dealing with that played a part in him not being able to show up for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. That's as good of a reason as to why, again, he wouldn't show up. But, that was with the Denver Broncos and with the NFL, not really with the Bucs. So, again, it's just confusing. The Bucs and Todd Bowles have both said that they don't really know why he showed up. And Todd Bowles actually spoke on this and how it all ended up, just resulting in nothing, getting nothing out of Randy Gregory. Todd Bowles said, "I'll never find out, but I wish him the best, and we'll move on from there. You can't miss what you never had." And he claims that he did not get an explanation as to why, this happened. Contrary to my belief, Bowles added that he believes that outside linebacker is, he has the most depth out of any position at that spot. So my issue with how everything developed with Randy Gregory and the Bucs was just that it's almost looked upon as a big waste of time now, for the Bucs, and especially with Yaya Diaby dealing with an ankle sprain, a high ankle sprain, if I'm not mistaken. I felt more comfortable having Randy Gregory there to have another guy to deploy out there for yourself if Yaya Diaby was suffering with this throughout the entirety of the year or for extended weeks in the regular season. But, Todd Bowles is pretty confident in that group, saying that he has the most depth there out of any position, and he is very comfortable with the players that they already have. So that's not what I thought. That's not what I believe, but, Todd Bowles would obviously know more than what I know, being in there around those guys each and every day. The Yaya Diaby injury still worries me. He's trying his best to make it there for week 1, but rushing these ankle injuries is not particularly the safe way to go, because those are the kind of injuries that nag on and can become a problem for multiple weeks if you don't really treat it appropriately. So that's something that still worries me, and this situation sort of reminds me pretty much as close as you can get to Haason Reddick, because you sign a guy that just doesn't show up, and basically it just becomes a messy situation that feels good once it's out of your head, and once you get it all over with, I'm sure it's a big relief. But in regards to how it compares to Haason Reddick, you have a guy come in thinking that he's going to be a big part of your team, but ultimately, for whatever reason, it could be contract negotiations with Haason or whatever reason Randy Gregory had for not showing up. This is how bad it could ultimately end up by releasing him at some point in time. And with Haason Reddick and how it compares, I don't think the Jets are quite there yet, but I'm sure the Tampa Bay Bucs feel very relieved that they've just gotten this out of the way now and, are able to move on and not have this be a reoccurring problem that they have to address each and every week. So how it all plays out with Haason Reddick, that'll be fascinating, because this one was very similar to that, and the Bucs just decided to say, we've had enough. We're not putting up with this anymore. Clearly, if you want to be here, you have to show up. You should have shown up before, but it wasn't the case with Randy Gregory, and they had no problem moving on from him. So it also has to be said that the Jets traded for Haason Reddick, so they gave up something to attain him, so that also has a part to play in all of this. But it's hard to find a smooth and easy solution, basically, closer to this time of year, especially because it's just been too long, that people just want it to end at this point in time. And for the Bucs, I think also just getting rid of it now and moving on from this situation and how just ugly and messy how it all got with Randy Gregory. Yes, they finally found a resolution, but now, to me, I think I would feel more comfortable trying to add more depth at this position, whether it's a guy like Yannick Ngakoue or something like that, or anybody else on the free agent market. I feel like they still need someone there, because overall in their defense, at each level, I think they have a decent piece in there, with Levante David at linebacker, with Vita Vea in the middle of that defensive line. You have Antoine Winfield back there as well, the highest paid safety in the NFL. You have good guys on that defense, but having, edge pressure, having someone come off the edge and just be a disruptant presence, play in, play out, I think that you can never have too many of those guys. And to me, in the hierarchy of building a competitive team and considering yourself a good team, I think that having that pass rusher is non-negotiable. And Yaya Diaby is very good, but you need more than that. You at least need two of those guys to create havoc, and to me, that's something that the Bucs are, lagging, or just lacking, I should say, at this point. And in a division where, we talked about, I think last week now, with the Atlanta Falcons getting very good and improving a lot over just a course of a couple of days last week, the Tampa Bay Bucs, I'm sure, are still there in terms of being favored for that division, or at least equal with the Atlanta Falcons up until this point. But you don't want to be left too far behind, and you don't want to be, dealing with a situation where you've become comfortable with where you are with your team. With the Falcons getting better, their defense is very much improved with Matthew Judon and Justin Simmons. They're not messing around by any means, so to try and keep up in this division. Yeah, it might not be one of the strongest ones in the NFL, but you still want to make it a goal to finish first and wanting to keep pace with the Atlanta Falcons as well, because their defense got better. Their offense is obviously very talented, waiting to be unleashed with Kirk Cousins or Michael Penix, whoever the quarterback ends up being. The Bucs are right there with them. They have a talented offense. Their defense, like I mentioned, has good players, but I just worry that they're not addressing it to the level that I feel is necessary. So that could come back to bite them throughout this season if, Yaya Diaby does go down, and then you're really struggling to create pressure, and your offense, you put a lot more pressure on them to put up points because the defense can't stop anybody. So, a very messy situation with Randy Gregory. It all comes to an end now, deciding to release him already this week. So we'll see where the Bucs go from here, whether or not they decide to add more depth there. We'll keep an eye on that as we go along. But that pretty much wraps it up for today's show. I want to thank you guys for joining me on the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast. And please remember to like, follow, and subscribe to the show as well, and following the network on all forms of social media. Check out more content around the NFL on the network's both YouTube channels, the Podcast Network channel and the Sports Network channel, for more content on the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast on both of those. And lastly, tune in every weekday live at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time for more NFL storylines and discussions around the NFL with me, Manny Maradiaga, as your host. Thanking you for joining me, and I hope to see you guys all back here joining me again tomorrow.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn, ain't that great. I don't wanna go to